remember laying on the ground in the barber shop, like bleeding out. When you're competitive and you're driven, you have this desire to always be doing something. Even if it isn't gonna work out, even if it all fails, it's still gonna be okay. Go like mega viral on TikTok. We had like 10 million views. I'll give you two answers to this. I was so sick. Like I had pneumonia, the flu, whatever it was. I started to make some money, like things were going well. It's a complicated question, and you know, actually it's not that complicated a question.
First, Brendan, thank you so much. And you know, for people watching who don't know about your story, you were shot 3 times. And
yes.
I know you were told that you'd never walk again, in difficulties, and 2 months later you're out playing hockey, and you run a 5K 3 months later and doing all these amazing things. But do you remember that day really vividly, or is it more of kind of like a blur?
Yeah, no, I remember it actually really vividly, and that's something that's not necessarily always common with trauma survivors, right? A lot of people that go through these life-altering injuries, and they don't remember the night, they don't remember the whole day before, they don't remember anything. For me, I remember almost everything. My memory's a little bit blurry when it came to the actual shooting, so like the being shot, I don't remember that well. Yeah. That maybe like 15-second stretch, but I remember laying on the ground in the barber shop, like bleeding out. I remember calling my mom. I remember going into the hospital that night for surgery. I remember a lot of those moments. There's some patchy moments for sure there, but yeah, I remember almost all of it. And
Mike, I was really wondering this. When you woke up, obviously you went to surgery, and I'm sure that was a big thing. When you woke up, what was the first emotions? Were you grateful that you were here? Were you kind of angry at the whole situation? Like, you must have had.
I was so grateful, and okay. I think, you know, it's maybe cheesy to say whatever, but I remember when I woke up, I didn't have my phone on me, so my phone was with the police because they didn't know if I was involved. It's all evidence, right? They don't know what's going on. And all I wanted to do was text my friends. Like, I was so annoying to the nurses, all the staff that were surrounding me, because I just wanted to let everyone know that I was okay. And most of the people that are in my life didn't even know I was shot at that point, right? So they didn't know what happened.
They just hadn't heard from you.
They just hadn't heard from me, right? And one of the funniest things that actually happened with that, and it's a total aside, just talking about how they didn't know, is at the time we were playing Call of Duty like every night because it was COVID, right? And you couldn't actually go out and see your friends. You couldn't do all this stuff. So we'd play Call of Duty, Warzone, like every night.
Yeah. And
I didn't message the group back that night. And the last message that I have, it's still saved in the group chat, is one of the boys saying, like, "Are you alive?" ? As
a joke,
As a joke, obviously, not knowing that I'd actually been shot.
Yeah.
And so the first message I answered when I did get my phone back was that group chat, and I just said, "LOL, I actually got shot. I'm okay though."
That's hilarious.
And then sent just a Snapchat of it.
Okay, yeah. And you know, I was on your social media, I was watching a few of your videos. Yeah. You said after the shooting you were given $1,000, I think, was it, from like trauma from the government?
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, in your head at least, did that make any difference in the world, or was it? No. Do you think more should have been done?
Yeah. So it's a complicated question, and you know, actually it's not that complicated a question. Yes, I think more should have been done, and I understand the way that the government works. I understand that there's obviously, you know, there's a lot of things that need to be funded, and there's a lot of people that go through a ton of situations who maybe aren't innocent bystanders. There's a million different unique components that make those things complicated.
Of course.
But what actually existed before I got shot was this program called the Victims' Compensation Board in Ontario. And that fund was basically a government-ran fund that allowed, let's say, a budget of $30,000 to $40,000, whatever it is, to victims who were impacted by some sort of violence, right? Negatively impacted. So, like, exactly what I would have gone through to cover their recovery costs, to cover all these different things. And that got pulled in 2019, like literally 4 months before I got shot, basically. So when I got shot, everyone was like, "Go apply for this, you'll get it, it'll cover all this stuff." It didn't exist anymore.
Okay.
The $1,000 I got covered was from this like program called the Victims Quick Response Program.
Okay.
And it's I don't know if it's a not-for-profit or if it's a government entity, but the max that they can pay out is $1,000. So
okay, so you got the max.
I got the max, yeah. And the video that I posted was just a bit of like a clickbait title, like obviously.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't like get shot to try to get $1,000.
Oh, of course,
but yeah, that's the max that I was entitled to.
Huh. And you know, this is for me too, and I'm sure you probably notice the same thing now, creating content. It seems everybody or most people who are athletes, who are big into business, they're going after something. It seems like there's a lot of loneliness and you're left out, and we even talked about this before, how you're kind of the odd one in the group. But for people who are just starting businesses, who are kind of going through sports, what advice do you have to kind of get over the mental part of it? I think that's the hardest part about anything, is, you know, getting in your head that it's going to work out, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that you just have to realize that even if it isn't going to work out, even if it all fails, it's still going to be okay, right? As corny as that sounds, I think before I got shot, what a lot of people don't know is I was working as a corporate consultant. You know, I just graduated university. I was living like quite literally what I thought was the dream, right?
Yeah.
I was working this nice like white collar job. I was starting to make some money. Like things were going well, but I hated my job. I complained about it all the time. You know, I didn't feel fulfillment.
Of course.
It was a lot of just like undue stress, but I thought that's all that life was, right? And when I got shot, I kind of had this epiphany. Actually, while I was bleeding out on the ground, I kind of just kept thinking to myself, if you die today, are you proud of the legacy you've left behind, right? Are you proud of the risks that you took? Are you proud of the things that you pursued in your life? Are you proud of the words like your best friends are going to say at your funeral, right? And at the time, my answer was no. And I had great friends. I had a great community around me. I probably would have been revered by them. But in my mind, I knew that when I woke up, no matter what happened to me, like no matter what I failed at, no matter what I tried and was bad at and just like kept losing with, eventually it was going to get better, right? It literally couldn't be worse than being shot in the artery, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's a big epiphany to have, though. That's like a real life-changing...
Dude, I was lucky.
Yeah. And, you know, I look at you and I see the perfect example of like someone who doesn't have, you could say, a victim's mindset, right? You were shot 3 times, but you were back at it doing sports and running and creating content and, you know, trying to help others. Was there a driving force behind that, whether that be yourself or was it family? Well, like what pushed you to get up instantly and just go?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a few things. My dad was a huge beacon of hope, I think, for me in those moments, and all of my life before too, right? One of the things that, you know, maybe is controversial that my dad really implemented into my brain at a young age was not to be a victim. He'd kind of, you know, poke fun at me if I was, you know, whining and crying about something, if I was complaining about something. And the example I always use is, it's such a silly example, but it really changed my view on the world way before I got shot, was when I was like 13 or 14 years old. I was a huge hockey guy. Like it was the thing that I loved. It was my dream. It was everything I wanted to do. And one year I got cut from the competitive team, and it broke my heart. I've cried, I think, 4 times in my life to date. Maybe actually, I think 3 times.
And that was one of them?
That was one of them.
Okay.
I didn't cry after I got shot. Like all this stuff it was that big of a deal to me, right?
Okay.
And so I got cut from that team, and I was getting calls from parents of the kids in the team, telling me it was politics, telling me it was BS, telling me the coach didn't like my parents, and that's why I didn't make it. All these like excuses.
Yeah.
And my dad came home that day and just kind of like asked me, he's like, well, what do you think happened? I was like, well, it was politics, like all this stuff that I'd been told by other people. And my dad just looked at me and was like, man, you had a bad tryout.
Yeah,
like, you just
straight
weren't
up with you,
good.
yeah.
Right? He's like, you thought that you made the team the second that you walked into tryouts because you've been on that team for the last 4 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You thought that you had a spot there already, and you didn't work like you didn't have a spot, right? You worked as if you were already guaranteed the end result, and you failed, and you were bad. And you can sit here and cry about it. You can sit here and blame everybody else, or you can go down a level, have the best year of your life, come back up next year and prove them wrong.
Yeah.
And that next year, like that stuck with me so much that I had the best year of my hockey career when I went down a level, obviously.
Okay.
I went back up the next year. Not only did I make the team, but the tryouts that we had, I was so sick. Like I had pneumonia, the flu, whatever it was.
Okay.
I was vomiting in the locker room between periods of my tryouts.
Wow.
And the coach told me to go home. Like he actually pulled me aside. He's like, you got to be out of here. Like, you got to get out of here. You're going to make other kids sick.
Yeah.
And I told him, as a 14-year-old, granted, I was like, you're going to have to cut me or keep me on the team, but I'm not leaving until one of those 2 things happens. And he told me, I think with 3 tryouts left, he's like, okay, like you made it, like go home, basically. I led the team in scoring that year. Like I had the best year of my hockey career. And that was all because I could have taken the victim's path, or I could have taken, the hero's journey, right? And that's it. It's an ode to my dad. And I also, another thing I'll add to that is, I think it's a lot easier to be the victim when you don't know what you need to do to be successful after going through something hard, right? In the example of getting shot, I knew what I needed to do, right? The roadmap was there. All I had to do was show up and do it and work hard and go to rehab and spend extra hours in rehab and spend extra hours in the gym and push myself and then learn about the mental side of recovery. I knew what the path was, right? And that made the process really, really easy.
And I think the same is with business too. I don't think people, or I'm sure there are, we can say lazy people, we could say, but I think it's more people are lost. Like they have no, when you have a plan, it's actually pretty easy.
You just have to show up and do the plan.
and do it. And I wanted to ask, people, I think in training especially, we look at like big tough guys like, like we could say David Goggins, and who are really pushing, carry the boats and let's do this and let's do that. But how could somebody, what's the first step? Like if I just failed at a business, I just broke my leg in hockey and I can't play the rest of the season, what's the one thing that I shouldn't be doing and the thing I should? Because I think a lot of people get really discouraged when, there's a setback or anything, and it kind of, people just give up.
Yeah, I think it's, again, maybe it's still really cheesy, but there's always a positive in everything that you go through, right? And when I got shot, for example, I remember thinking a lot when I was a kid, everything that happened to me was a part of this story that I was going to tell one day, right? And when I got shot, that's exactly how I saw it. Instead of seeing it as the worst thing that ever happened to me and something that was unimaginable, I saw it as an opportunity to get a little bit closer to the man that I want to become in life, right? And if you, let's say, tear your ACL and you have a really bad injury and it's going to derail your sports career, you could look at that as the thing that stopped you from getting to your dream situation. Or you can look at it and you could spend that time studying game film and going through the mental side of recovery and really just trying to get better in other areas so that when you do come back, you're going to be 10 times better. Right? Like your physical might need a little bit more work, but there's always things that you can do with the time that you have off, right? And I think that, again, that comes to knowing what you want and figuring out how to accomplish it, even if you it might have a couple roadblocks and it might take a little bit longer.
Yeah, it reminds me, I heard a story once, I think it was like of a Japanese fisherman, and it was a huge storm, and I want to say it was his son or his grandson's like, well, we can't do anything today, there's a storm, we're not going to go fish, but he's like, we can prepare our nets, we can get the boat cleaned, we can do this, and there's always something that can be done. And I really like how you brought that up, because in business too, you can always research something, you can always message somebody to connect with.
And the reality is too, in business, let's say, a lot of people, they just suck at it at first, right? Nothing really prepares you for it. If you don't have a strong mentor, if you don't have any real understanding of direction or what you need to do, or maybe you just aren't skilled enough at what you're trying to do.
It takes time.
It takes time, right? And if you just stop at the first obstacle every time, you're never going to develop the skills that you need to actually get to that next level. So yeah, it's cheesy, but everything is an opportunity for learning and growth if you view it as such, but it's also an opportunity for failure if you view it as such too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like after you got shot, I'm sure you've done a lot of growing. What's kind of your day look like? I'm sure they're so different throughout the week, but is there kind of a list of, we could say, non-negotiables that you go through every day? Is there kind of that normal order that you have in your day-to-day?
Yeah, it's tough. I'll say after I got shot, it was very different than it is now, and it was very different, when I was working on other projects than it is now. I think the one constant that I have in all of my good days that I don't necessarily adhere to every day, but in all of my good days, is I spend less time on my phone, and I spend more time, connected to not even necessarily just working, but connected in my relationship, connected through just like reading a book that I'm really interested in. I do something that I feel is meaningful to me that isn't necessarily work or an obligation, you know what I mean? And I think that being present in those, I guess what I'm saying is, in the perfect day for me, I spend at least an hour focused on something that means a lot to me and actively present in whatever it is that I'm doing. And even just 1 hour of that every day, it puts me in the right headspace.
Even for me too, it's almost, you could say it's almost like being, it's crazy to sound, it's almost like being at a spa.
Yeah.
For me at least, I'll like, if I'm off the phone and I'm reading, as hard as it is to get off that phone when you're on it, you feel relaxed, you feel good, you almost feel like you want to, it turns into that snowball effect, right? You want to just go from reading your book to now doing this to that, as opposed to when you're on the phone, it's just...
Well, and I think what ends up happening, especially when you're competitive and driven, especially it seems like you are obviously, right? When you're competitive and you're driven, you have this desire to always be doing something, because when you're always doing something, you're always productive, you're always moving forward, you're always, watching a podcast because you need to retain more information, you need to learn more stuff. But the reality is, if you're watching a podcast while you're doing another task or you're trying to double stack, you're not retaining any of the information that you're bringing in, right? Whereas when you spend that 1 hour present reading a book or even just focused on having a conversation with somebody that is interesting to you, you grow from that, right? You actually retain what you're experiencing in those moments, and that's why it's so important to me.
And I also think a lot of people think they're productive, but they're just busy.
Yeah.
And most people don't know the difference, and I kind of suffered from this a bit starting
me too.
Business. Like the example of the podcast, I would spend from 5 o'clock to 11 at night just watching videos and this and that. But I wouldn't even, in the beginning, there would be no notes taken.
Yeah.
You'd be going on your phone in between, taking a call, but you still, for some reason, you think that because you're doing something, it's pushing you forward. But I think that, again, it's about being wise in what you choose to do, right? So you're almost better off to, instead of doing 5 hours of that, you'd get more out of half an hour or an hour of reading that book or talking.
I find, on my most productive days, they aren't the days where I just get up at 8 a.m. and work till midnight. You know what I mean? My most productive days are the ones where I take, let's say, 2, 4, 5 hour blocks, and I'm really focused for those 4 to 5 hours, right? I'm really dialed in. That's going to beat just unless you're doing a monotonous task like data entry or something that you could do without actually thinking about it. When you need to be present, it's better. Even if you take 1 hour straight and just actually focus for that 1 hour, you can get more done than most people get in an 8-hour day, right?
That's literally my most productive days. Like, even, actually, today is a really good example of that. This was quite a productive day. There was some mishaps that happened.
Getting in the car
got a little rear-ended. But other than that, it wasn't a full day of work. Like, I was at the gym, I played some tennis, but it was like an hour in the morning. There was like a 2-hour meeting in the day with you here, and then maybe some editing later. But the amount that was done earlier in the day, just off like those 3-4 hours, was way more than I'd get done if I just sat at home for 12 hours and just tried to do it. And I think that's, again, you don't need 12 hours of straight work, but you need that deep work for an hour or 2 hours. And I wanted to bring up something that maybe won't have you smiling as much, but
it's gonna be hard, man.
Is after the shooting, or even before the shooting, is there now been a moment, I'm kind of aiming more towards the training side, have you had that breakdown moment yet, or do you think, and I know you said you've only maybe cried 3 or 4 times in your life, but has there been that where you've given up and then gone through, back into it, or have you just been smiling every day through it?
I think I'll give you 2 answers to this, because I think yes, I have, but there's also a lot of moments that I've tried to and been unable to, right? So I think one of the things that I don't know if I've ever even talked about really publicly is maybe a year after the shooting, things were going really well for me. I was starting to build the charity. We were starting to get this traction on social media. We were starting to actually make an impact in the areas that I cared about. And I remember just being so overwhelmed, so intimidated by it all, so just unable to process everything. And what a lot of people don't realize is at those moments when things were going well, I was still scared to walk down the street because I thought I was going to get killed, right? Like, I still had all these symptoms of the PTSD that I was dealing with. And there was also the fact that the people who shot me were awaiting trial. I guess 2 of the 8 of them or whatever it was were awaiting trial. And I don't know if they don't want me to testify,
That's
right?
Scary,
there could be some real threat to my life, right? And I remember just sitting in my car and just trying to cry. Like, I literally sat in my car for like an hour and a half trying to cry, and I couldn't. And I just left my car with a big ass smile on my face. And it sounds so So like made up
But
almost.
I feel what you're saying,
But
yeah.
I tried so hard to be miserable, but I was so grateful for the things that I still did have
Yeah.
that it was difficult for me to process those negative emotions in
Your
a way
brain
that was
just
bad.
yeah.
And, you know, I think in more recent memory, it's been a little bit harder to find my direction. I think I've been struggling with that a little bit more recently than I did in those early days, because in the early days, everything was pretty clear to me. And through the Ironman training process, there's been a couple moments like that, for sure. There's been some moments where, you know, I'm trying to establish where I want to take my charity and I want to take some of the business that I'm working on, and I don't know the answers to a lot of those questions. And the reality is that's a lot harder than going through what I went through when I got shot, because I knew what the answers were, right? So
when you have the roadmap, it's a big difference. It's a lot easier than when you're trying to create the map and then go follow it in it.
Yeah, so I haven't had that moment yet, if I'm being honest, and maybe it won't happen. I like to envision things, and I'm gonna bawl my eyes out, I think, at the Ironman finish line.
Okay.
I think that's gonna be the fourth time I cry. And I think that's gonna be the moment where, like I was telling you before, I'm ready to take on some new things, and I'm ready to move on to this next stage of my life, and that's overwhelming, and that's I think something that, you know, can lead you to a bit of a breakdown, but I think in a positive way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. And you said the guys were waiting trial. Were they were caught then? Like, what?
So they all got released.
Okay.
So they were caught. They were held for trial, and the trial was like a 3-year process. So it ended with them all being released. I think 2 of the 8 were caught, but you know, I don't really have any vitriol towards them.
That's what I was about to ask. Like, do you still hold hate? Like,
I held no resentment for them, like, the week after I got shot, and it was really strange because,
like, you wouldn't be you wouldn't be angry if you saw them walking around.
No, I'd love to talk to them, if I'm being honest. I actually, through one of my friends, Ottawa's a small town, and like, I knew who they were pretty quickly. They knew who I was pretty quickly, and I also know kind of what led up to it. It was some gang stuff, and it was unfortunate that I got caught in the middle of something like they were going through, and it was unfortunate that, you know, they maybe were so reckless to do that in a public setting, like a barbershop in the middle of, you know, the late afternoon, early evening, right? It wasn't a good time to do what they were doing, but
definitely not.
I also try to understand that these people have been through certain life experiences that led them to the place that they felt like they needed to do what they did in those situations, and it became pretty clear to me really quickly that regardless of what, you know, the law, you know, came down on them with, what kind of punishment they had to serve, it was going to do no good for me, right? If they got 100 years behind bars,
it doesn't really change your life.
It doesn't change my life, right? And until the more I spent trying to tie, you know, my self-worth to the punishment that they had to face, the further I was actually going to get from recovering and doing the stuff that I wanted to do.
Yeah, you got to
right?
kind of forget about them.
And I'll be honest in saying, if it was my brother who got shot, or, you know, my sister, or someone who was dear to me, I'd probably be a little bit more angry towards those people, right? Yeah. But in my mind, you know, there was no positive to wishing ill on them.
For sure.
And it wasn't my place.
Yeah, no, that's a deep one, because I thought, like, I don't know, after being shot, you'd think you'd be holding some sort of deep hate.
I would have thought that too.
But do you, as crazy as this may sound, are you happy that you were shot? Like, if I told you could go back to, it was 2021?
2020.
2020. If you go back to that day on 2020, would you change it?
No.
So you take the gun out of their hand, you're going to leave it, and you're going to let everything...
With the way that everything unfolded now, even with the long-term injuries that I might have, there's not a chance. Because, you know, we started the conversation by talking about, you know, how do you find the courage for doing hard things? And how do you put yourself out there and, you know, learn that failure is okay and learn, you know, who you are? It's really hard, right? Nobody prepares you for that stuff, and sometimes you have to go through something that's so traumatizing and so tragic and so terrible, and come out the other side successful and stronger because of it, to know that you're capable of doing those hard things, right? And
yeah, it's that life-changing moment almost.
Yeah.
I feel like it's...
And like, I didn't grow up in hard circumstances, right? I grew up, my dad's a truck driver. My mom, you know, she stayed at home for a lot of my childhood and then worked part-time, so I was never like wealthy or anything. But I grew up with a mom who cared about me, a dad who cared about me, you know, sports in my life. I had no real like objective
nice
struggles,
childhood, yeah.
right? Like, there was no chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
There was no, you know, forced resilience. And when you go through something like that, it fundamentally changes who you are, and it can change you in a good way or a bad way. And lucky enough for me, my parents raised me well enough to allow it to change me in a good way.
You're on the right path. And can I ask, do you think, because this is for anything, do you think that a tough setback, getting shot, whatever it is, do you think that changed who you are, changes who you are, or do you think it just revealed who you always were?
I think it revealed who I always was. And you know, there's so many silly little things I did when I was a kid that I look back on now and I'm like, oh shit, okay, like I guess I kind of had that dog in me when I was young. Like, I remember, I don't know if you ever did like cross country races. You do the little
did for school,
track and field, whatever it is. I was a good runner when I was a kid, and I remember there was this one guy I was competing with in like grade I don't know, 7, no, maybe 6. I was super young.
Okay.
And my block was about 200 meters, and I ran my block 100 times the day before my training to just like impress this girl who lived, this little girl, like girl in my I thought I was slick, and then B, to train so hard that I could beat this kid, because in my mind, if I could do 100 laps around the block, I'd definitely beat him
in one.
Yeah. Now, probably bad advice to do that the day before the race. I actually lost him.
Okay.
But in my mind, that was like the normal thing to do, right? And that's like a 200. That's like a 20-kilometer run, right?
Yeah,
like
you've been doing this since you're in grade 6,
and that's like I didn't even realize it was that, right? Yeah. But there was some part of me that always needed people to kind of tell me, you can't do this, to actually get me to step up and do it, if that makes sense. And the shooting was just an extreme example of that. So I was lucky. Yeah,
there's a really good book, I don't know if you've heard it, it's called Choose Your Enemies Wisely.
Yeah.
And that's, again, all about having that driving force, or that person that's telling you can't do it, and you're going after it. On the training, you're running, you're biking, you're swimming. What's harder, the physical or the mental part?
The mental, for sure. I think, you know, at the start, maybe it was the physical, but actually, it's always been the mental. Because even like swimming, for example, is the one that I've struggled with the most. And like I was saying off screen, I learned how to swim 6 months ago, right? And now I'm literally doing an Ironman in 3 weeks.
That's crazy.
I got to swim 4K on race day in these crazy conditions. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, I was like genuinely scared putting on my wetsuit and going into the open water. My girlfriend can attest to that. I was like a little kid, right? I was so afraid, and I was afraid because if I couldn't do those long swims, it meant that all this training was for nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Even like it meant that I wasn't going to be able to do
the Ironman, yeah.
And I've been able to do those swims, and I've actually started to build confidence. But doing an event like this is so focused, like it's so focused on how confident you are, how far you're able to push yourself in the moments where you start to doubt yourself, if that makes sense. And the showing up and putting in the work is the easy part, right? You're kind of just you listen to whatever your plan says and you go do it.
It's more keeping on track and not letting yourself fall off. And obviously nutrition is a huge key. What's that played in your role? Even me, I struggle sometimes, especially when you're out all the time. It's not always easy to get.
Well, part of maybe this isn't good advice, but part of the thing that's nice about doing an Ironman, you're doing so much cardio. I'm burning 5,000-6,000 calories a day.
Okay, so
you kind of just eat whatever is available. You try to eat your proteins. You want to have a lot of carbohydrates. There are things that you try and specifically get into your diet. I'm a huge fan of salmon. I eat a lot of like red fish, a lot of ground beef as well, a lot of just rice. I'm a pretty plain eater, but I eat my fair share of snack food as well, just trying to get those extra 200 300 calories, or maybe 2,000 calories in.
So you're burning them either way, then it's not
100%. And like I wouldn't maintain that diet if I was trying to bodybuild or even do marathon, whatever it is. But all of those added together, you gotta
Swinging the
put on a
bike,
little extra weight.
For sure, yeah. Do you have a morning setup? Because I feel like a morning routine. Because I feel like with all the training and everything you do, there's got to be something you do in the morning that's keeping you going all day. I don't know if you read or if you meditate.
I try to read in the morning. That's I think and again, I'm not always adhering to this. I'm definitely not perfect at this stuff, but the best days that I have, I get up and I don't look at my phone, or I look at it very minimally to make sure there's no emergencies. I get outside and I just read for an hour. I sit on my balcony, ideally in the sun. I have my coffee and my smoothie, and I just read, and it always puts me in the right headspace.
Listen, to me, like when you said that, I'm picturing almost perfect.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? You're out in the sun, you're just chilling, you're reading your book, you don't have to, scroll on Instagram or whatever it is. And that just kind of sets you up for the
what
day.
I try to do too with those books is, I obviously, like probably similar to you, I have an interest in business books, I have an interest in all these things. In those morning reading sessions, I really try to focus on something that's personal development related, or I'm really into stoicism, like that sort of stuff. I'm reading The Hero's Journey right now. That's what I read this morning. Like, that's the book. I want to read those books. I want to read the books that don't require me to, bring out the pen and the highlighter and be taking notes and actually be overthinking it. Especially I want to just sit down. That's it. I want to just sit down and read the things that I kind of already know. Like if you read any of Ryan Holiday's books,
I've read. I want to. Maybe you'll bring one up and I'll.
The Obstacle is the Way is my favorite.
He's done a few though.
There's Courage is Calling. There's Discipline is Destiny.
I think I want to say it's Discipline is Destiny. I have at home because I've read.
And they're so awesome because they're already lessons that you probably know, right?
But they're getting instilled in
in your brain, so you don't have to think so deeply in your readings. You just kind of flow, right? And I really enjoy that.
And look at it as almost like a common sense book in a way that you're kind of just getting re-upped in. Is there one book that's made a big difference?
There's a couple. I think the most important one in my recovery is, I think there's two I think that were the most important. The first is Living with the Seal by Jesse Itzler, and he actually wrote that book about living with David Goggins.
I love all this content. When Goggins would wake him up and force him to do the pull-ups and all that.
So that book was one that I read before the shooting, and it's the first book I read in the hospital after the shooting. I literally just reread the book because I just thought it was such a light read and funny, but also it kind of showed that this random dude could do all of these incredible things, right? And to me, I internalized that when I needed it the most. And the second is The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And that's another book. I've read it a few times. I give it to all the trauma survivors that I work with. I just think it's really important. I've been gifted it by two of my closest friends too. So it means a little bit more to me. But there's just so many lessons in that book that make you kind of grateful for what you have and resilient. And like we just said, all of the lessons already, right? Like they're not these like big revelations that you have
to study some math
show up
numbers
and be disciplined and be grateful and all this stuff. Like you already know them, but reading them on a day-to-day basis, it just kind of reminds you of them, and it keeps them in active forethought in your day-to-day, which is nice.
And speak of on the topic of recovery, are there any new tools that you're using, ice baths or saunas, or more onto the physical side that you're doing regularly that have been helping?
Not as regularly as I maybe should be. The ice baths are something that I really enjoy. It's more for my nerves in my right leg than the actual muscle inflammation that most people would use them for. But no, I probably need to do a little bit more of that stuff, honestly. But I do like a good sauna session. I use my massage gun quite a bit. That helps a little bit, but when you're training as much, you're training 15, 20 hours a week, it's hard to fit some of that stuff in sometimes.
So, obviously you've learned a lot on the journey of recovery. Is there something specific you learned about being more of a leader? Like you're running, it's Hit the Ground Running as the charity, right? Yeah, you're running a charity and you're with all these people. What have you done to be that person who they can look up to and be like, wow, he was shot 3 times, but look what he's doing now?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer, and I think it's a hard question to answer because there's a lot of people who read, books on leadership. They're so
Yeah.
invested in all this stuff. They're reading, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and all these things, and they try to force being a leader so much that I think it comes off as a little disingenuous. For me, the biggest thing that I think has made an impact on, especially the survivors whose lives that I've been able to impact, is just showing up and doing it, like doing the thing, right? I think that you don't become a leader by, talking about it. You don't become a leader by complaining about things and, trying to make everybody else like you and all that stuff. You become a leader just by showing up and doing the things that other people don't want to do.
It's hilarious too, because I just finished grade 11, and I was taking like a business leadership course, and one of the biggest things was like reviewing all the the leadership categories. And now this leader only does this, and this leader does this. And I had said to my teacher, I'm like, because it wasn't in one of the things, I'm like, do you think the best leader is just the one who is doing what they want basically to get done? Like if you are trying to get and inspire trauma survivors to go out there, so what do you do? And you're doing that, right? You're kind of doing what you're preaching, right, in a sense. And I think I guess that's probably
I think that's a huge part of it. I think the other big part of it is that there's a lot of people out there who are afraid that if they empower the people that they support, it's actually going to put them down. I don't know if that makes sense, but what you see with a lot of people in let's say like corporate jobs and that sort of stuff, or maybe in like managerial roles or some sort of leadership, is they almost don't want their people to become so good that they could leave. They could go work somewhere else. They could take their job. They could do this stuff. And to me, being a good leader is really giving everybody else the tools to thrive without you, right? You want to make your people better regardless if that has a negative impact on you, if that's whatever the impact is. I want the people who I support to never have to talk to me again and still be able to thrive, right?
And I think I'd like to think that most people, in a sense, are appreciative when you give them those tools. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They want to give back to you. They want to stay by you because you've brought them up to your level, or even given them more. But kind of switching to a different note, not to keep bringing up the shooting.
I'm so open about it.
It's obviously a traumatic event. I want to know what the decision making is like now after that, because even me, I've never had anything like that, but there's certain things where we kind of think, is what I'm doing worth it? Or I know you had the job before, but are you more thoughtful about your decisions on a day-to-day, knowing that I could have died, right? I could have been in that situation.
Yeah, I am, and I think it's not necessarily even a day-to-day thing, right? I think that just like everybody else, I have my good days, I have my bad days, I have my days where I'm dialed and humming on all cylinders, and then I have my days where I'm kind of lazy and I don't do the things that I need to do, right? And I think where it's changed the most is if there's any days where I want to quit or want to give up or start to question the decisions that I'm making and think that I'm not capable, I don't believe that stuff anymore, right? And I think that's where it's really changed, and it also gives me a greater amount of gratitude for the things that I do have, like I said before.
And the little things?
Yeah, some of the little things. I think one of the things that also, going through something, like I went through, like one of the things that gets put in perspective when you almost die is you appreciate the little things that matter, and you also don't care about a lot of the things that don't matter.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's so many little things that, everybody, we were talking about cars before, we were talking about stuff. There's so many things that people like attach their sense of self-worth to, and they're stressed what
their clothes, their nails,
and like also what other people think, right?
Yeah.
Like, some people are so worried about what Timmy or Sally or Joe think about them that they do the things that Timmy and Sally and Joe respect instead of the things that they want to do, right? They don't be themselves. They don't live the life that's true to them. And that leads to a lot of, sadness and regret, right? And now I don't know that I'm necessarily fixed in all of the ways. I'm not a perfect person by any means, but when the tough decisions come up and the really hard points in my life come up, I'm a little more in tune, I think, with what my purpose on this planet is, right? And like what I want to do rather than what somebody else wants me to do.
I think Dana White said it really well. He said people spend most of their lives trying to do things they don't like to impress people they don't like.
Yeah, literally.
It's so crazy, and that's why I kind of asked you after, something like that happens, you think, like, if I was told that I'm going to die tomorrow, I can tell you one thing, I'm not going to care at all what my hair looks like or what anything. It's going to be, I'm going to be with the people that matter and do the things that are most important. And speaking of kind of doing important things, do you think you'll turn your journey into a business?
Yeah, so I already do a little bit. Right now with one of my mentors, I run a consulting business where we talk about like digital marketing and storytelling and that sort of stuff. So that wing is important to me. The other reason that wing is important to me is one of my dreams, I think now, is I'd love to consult and support not-for-profit organizations with that sort of stuff. I've realized it's hard to run your own, especially when you don't have big funders, you don't have big backing. It's hard to run a not-for-profit when you're competing. Like, most people go make their money and then they do it. I did it in reverse. But the reason I want to stay in the not-for-profit space is I find it so fascinating, right? And the stories that I'm able to tell are meaningful ones, right? And I think that there's a major gap in that industry when it comes to being able to monetize their content, monetize the massive audience of people out there who are on social, right? There's very few charities that do that stuff well, even though they have literally the best stories in the world. Do
you think it's because they're not authentic in a way?
I think part of it is that. When I worked at Canadian Blood Services, I got a lot of love for Canadian Blood Services and the cause. But I think that one of the things that held them back is they were so afraid of ever getting any ounce of like potentially negative press to that one person in their room who is upset about their whatever. Like they don't even care about the blood services. They just are angry about something and want to be angry publicly. They stopped telling the stories that mattered in ways that connected with the public, right? They kind of like put the bubble wrap on all of their stories to avoid causing any sort of negative feedback, and it hurt the donors, right? It not the donors, it hurt the recipients. It hurts the people who back
to trying to try to impress people in some sort of sense, right? You don't want to make someone angry, so
and I think the not-for-profit world is like particularly bad for that, and I think it's because there's a lot of really, really, really good, meaningful people in those industries who want to make everybody happy, right? And it's why I kind of look at it as like, I want to make everybody happy, but I care more about the people who are receiving the support than the people who are leaving negative feedback, right?
Comments and
so that's one of the business ventures I'd be really interested in. I think it's where I'll probably be taking this next wave after IRONMAN. I'll be trying to do a little bit more of that, but I'm really excited to work on some more content stuff as well. I know, like we talked about a little bit off camera, I haven't really talked about this like with any like publicly or just with many people yet, but I really want to get back into some of the social good campaigns that I did, and that was kind of inspired by this one girl. Her name's Zoe. She was someone I worked with at Canadian Blood Services. She's got a rare blood disease, and I had something that could become terminal. She's 8 years old, so she's very young, and I've stayed really close with the family. They're wonderful people, and we did a little campaign trying to find stem cell donors for her a while back, and she actually ended up finding one, which was remarkable. But then when they went to do the procedure, it turns out she's a tumor in her knee, and they can't do the surgery until that tumor's removed, the transplant, until the tumor's removed. So now we're delaying the process, and it's all complicated. But what I realized is those were the most fun campaigns I ever did, and that maybe sounds weird because these stories are so tragic, but she was driving from Windsor to Toronto every week for blood transfusions, and we got to go and give her this like special day. She wants to be a YouTuber. We introduced her to some YouTubers with Red Bull Gaming, and like we did all this fun stuff, kind of like MD Motivator type vibes. That was the stuff that I actually really loved doing, right? Those were the pieces of content that I did that my heart was in, right? That I didn't feel were forced. Like when I'm talking about myself and, doing this Ironman and Brandon's journey and all that stuff, it's really cool that people connect with that. But I'm like pretty sick of talking about me, right? I like making other people happy. And so that's, I think, the venture, like the avenue I see my content going back towards. is just trying to make a difference in as many people's lives, like in real life, as I can.
And I think you bring up something that maybe 95% of people don't think about, and probably 9.9 out of 10 people are going to think if you gave them $100 billion, they're going to be ecstatic for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, we even talked about this a bit off camera, I don't think it's that. I think you need that fulfillment, I think that's it. Like, whether that be content creating, could be that thing, meeting new people and having that project. But I think just the money, there's like, what are you gonna do? Drive a Ferrari on the beach every single day, and you know what I mean? You have to have something bigger than...
It's got to be, you got to find that balance too, right? I think like the reason that vessel of content is something that I really want to go towards is because I love it, and then in doing that, it actually allows me to build up a portfolio that shows to not-for-profits and people that I actually do want to work with on a consulting basis, I have the skills to do it, right? So there is like an ulterior motive, I guess you could say, but for me, it's where my heart's aligned, right? I could do a million other things with content and be successful. Like, I have no doubt in my mind with that. We understand the game well enough now. But there's just something about like seeing other people happy. Like, I'd rather see that girl have the best day of her life than, like, I don't know, talk about how great my bike is or whatever I'm doing with triathlon. It's so meaningless to me to just like talk about how great I am and try to like convince other people how great I am over and over and over again on social.
You just feel a lot better, and it kind of tees up my next question, that it seems most people, maybe not most, but a lot of people are afraid to be authentic with content because I think they're focused solely on like monetizing it, right? It's like, I want to get my followers and that's that. But how have you, and you kind of just explained it in a sense, but what's been your key to not only monetizing the content but still being, I want to say, like 100% authentic? It seems like you're really raw in a sense of kind of showing your life, but most people wouldn't want to do that. They'd only show you, we even talked about this, but they only show you the highs, but they don't really show you the lows or the in between.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and there's some videos I put out where I'm like, maybe I was over curated, maybe I spent, so it's nice to hear, but I do try to be me, because I think when you really stress about trying to monetize, you don't build trust with your audience, right? They're immediately, we talked about, let's say like the Jordan Belfort type like salesperson off camera. It worked in the 1980s because nobody knew what was coming at them. Now we have this general distrust of people who are trying to monetize you, right? And also there's a lot of people out there who create authentic content who do get, like, people actually want to support them. Like, if your sole goal is to monetize, you should be the most authentic person in the world.
You should be the most raw, uncensored.
But to me, the reason that I care about being authentic is because it makes me happy, right? When I'm putting out this like fake persona, what I believe to be like not as authentic as I possibly could be out to the world, you're living in this world of stress, you're living in this world of fear, you're living in this world of, I don't know, just like being a liar, right? And I've seen people do that stuff. I've seen content creators that, I won't name any names or anything, but like I've seen people go that route and they're miserable. They might even do well on content, but they're miserable people. They've taken on a responsibility that,
they're someone they're not.
They're someone they're not constantly, right? And I don't know. I'd rather be me and poor than somebody else and wealthy, and that's something that people might debate. But you sell your soul; none of it's worth it.
Exactly. And I'm wondering, you have like almost 25,000 followers on Instagram. If you only had maybe 500 or 1,000, do you think you'd still be posting the same thing, or would have you switched in a way? You know what I mean? Like if you didn't get that traction, and
I'd probably be posting more if I had less followers. Yeah, it's hard to say. I think my TikTok account was the one that first really took off. I think I have like 110,000 on TikTok. And I kind of like stopped using it because it's hard to monetize TikTok, but
especially in Canada.
Yeah, but one of the things that was really cool about TikTok is we talk about this authenticity and vulnerability, and for a long time, like a year and a half, I didn't post anything on Instagram. I only posted on my TikTok because none of my friends had me on TikTok. It was just a random account that I built by myself that nobody saw me on. So it was like this way for me to just be authentically myself without having to worry about what the people in my life thought about it, right?
Yeah.
And eventually I just started posting some of that stuff on Instagram, and then was like, okay, I'm just going to start posting who I really am. And
once, I feel, even for me, like once you kind of get those first pieces of content out, then you're all in, like you don't really care about getting into it. That's hard.
And I think part of it, like the one thing that surprises most people, especially in today's world, is 9 out of 10 people are either going to not care at all or they're going to be supporters, right? Like most of the people, like I have so many people I didn't even know were that close of friends or like, you know, rooting for me, who are the people who support all my stuff, who are DMing me all the time, who are actively engaged in the stuff that I'm doing. And it means the world to me, right? Like those people probably don't even realize how much of an impact it makes on my life.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of people who are probably talking shit behind my back, sending it to their buddies. They're, you know, roasting me, whatever. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Right? Because those people, they're in their own little world, and they're too afraid to take on any sort of like additional challenges, and they'd rather see you fall than have to try to rise up, right? So I think the first couple videos that you post kind of help you get your head out of those negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And then eventually you start to gain traction, and then nobody's judging you for it anymore, right?
Yeah, everybody makes fun of you, and then eventually they're begging to work with you in a sense.
That's it.
Right?
It's like you have 2,000 followers, you have 500 followers, and you're like, you know, trying to be an influencer, and then you get 25K followers, and it's like, oh, like,
what did you do?
Yeah, how did you do that, right? So
it's just a journey that to get to those 25,000 that I think most people fall off. But if you just push, it'll come. And to get you thinking kind of in a more business mindset, I'm really curious if I gave you $100,000 and I told you could start any business. It could be, you know, health and fitness. It could be, we mentioned digital marketing. I'm curious, like, what route would you take?
Yeah, I'd stay in the not-for-profit space for sure, and I'll tell you how I'd break that down. If you gave me $100,000, I'd probably take the first, let's say, $20,000, give or take, and I would fully dedicate giving that money to other people.
As a donation.
As a donation, and what I would do is I would find 20 people who, you know, are going through some sort of life-altering trauma, some sort of situation like I went through. I'd run 20 independent campaigns, maybe do one every 2 weeks, fundraising for them.
Like a GoFundMe type?
Like a GoFundMe type thing, like almost like Kickstart their recovery fund. Because I know how to tell those stories well, right? Like that's where not only where my interests are, my skills are, as well as a storyteller, and where my heart really is, right? And then you give me $80,000 outside of that, I would use that money to grow the consulting wing that works with not-for-profits. So I basically use the $20,000 to create case studies in a meaningful way, showcase the exact work that we could do, and then I would use that $80,000 to, you know, build lead funnels, run ads, do that sort of stuff for the consulting wing of it, and just take on more and more clients in that space. Because I think right now I do some trainings for not-for-profits on like digital marketing and that sort of stuff. I also have a really good understanding of, you know, automating some of their back end and that sort of stuff. You know, things as simple as, you know, websites, like funnels, all that stuff. But I want to put that stuff together in a way that, you know, could be beneficial to the not-for-profit world in particular, just because I understand it well.
There's a lot of do you know Russell Brunson is?
I do, yeah.
Have you read the books?
I have.
Okay, I read through all the ClickFunnels.
That's awesome that you read that at 16. That's
those are a little bit difficult. I was taking some notes with those, but it was cool to know when you brought up funnels. Was the first thing I.
Yeah, he's the goat.
He's in there for sure.
Yeah.
And so you take the money and you just go help more people.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I would take a percentage of it. Obviously, you take a bigger percentage to you know, run the programs, maybe build a bit of a team. But I'd reinvest that money into the things that I think actually matter. And in the world that we live in today, your public image is everything, right? Like the impact piece that you're able to make is everything. And it's so, there's a dual benefit, because that's the stuff that I love to do and what I want to do. And it's what makes me happy. And it's what makes me, you know, fulfilled in the work that I'm able to do. But it's also literally the best case study building example you could ever have, right? And those stories are really easy to get viral traction on as well,
you could
right?
say monetize on them too, but you're helping, obviously.
That's it. It would be no direct monetization for me on those stories, right? Like everyone, like I would just build out exactly what I'm trying to help charities build out,
Yeah.
and show like, look, we raised 20K, we raised 25K, whatever it is. Like one of the charities that I work with, actually not charities, one of the girls that I work with, she supports a lot of charities. She has like, I think it's like 4,000 charities in her web of like her community that she helps.
Okay.
And I was talking to her about the back end, the digital marketing and all that stuff, and she said that she's never once seen a charity raise like over $5,000 through social media. Right?
Really?
That's and we had one campaign that within 2 days raised like 24,000.
Okay.
Right? And it's like there's certain things that we did that they don't know how to do, obviously, but they're very simple. Right? Like there's a couple tweaks, like for perspective, and this is, I think, really cool, especially if you're interested in funnels.
Yeah.
And the different platforms. We had one video with one of the kids we were fundraising for go like mega viral on TikTok. We had like 10 million views, whatever it was.
Really? Okay.
And it was like okay on Instagram. We raised like $600, right? Which sounds so insane. But we raised almost nothing. Our back end was terrible. Our website was bad. Our checkout model was hard.
Yeah, for 10 million views, it doesn't see it.
It's crazy how low that was.
Yeah.
Then we had a video that got, I think, 4 million views, and we raised like 24,000 off of. Right?
What was on
Instagram. That was so Instagram is like better to monetize. But also we started integrating the software called Fundraise Up into our website. So now you can see like how many other people have donated. You can see recent donations. You can see all of these like metrics that create trust and credibility.
Yeah.
And we opened up a checkout model through Apple Pay, right? So our first one, you had to go put your credit card in. You're on your phone. You're kind of like brainlessly scrolling. You're not going to go get your credit card. You're not going to do that stuff. Apple Pay, you just double tap, right?
We made it the path of least resistance, you could say.
Exactly. We made the path of least resistance, and it made such a big difference. And it wasn't that hard to implement, right?
Yeah.
But it's something that almost nobody thinks of unless they're really, really, really driven to get better and learn about that stuff.
Yeah, unless they're watching Russell Brunson.
Unless they're watching Russell Brunson. And a lot of people in the not-for-profit space are not watching Russell Brunson.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's... People don't realize that those tiny tweaks can literally like 10x your sales, whatever you're doing. It's
and there's a lot of like older people in that industry as well, right? So like there's a lot of people who really care, who really want to make an impact, but they just don't know about this stuff. It's not something they've ever had to do for their career, right?
And I'm kind of curious, after a big traumatic event or anything, do you spend your money differently? Because people always... At least me, I've kind of, study business, and it's always, save this much, try to, spend as least, so at this time, you can have that, but I think people don't realize that you might not always get to that time, as sad as it might sound, but do you kind of, like, if there's something you want, in a sense, do you just say, screw it, I'm gonna buy it, or? I think
it depends on what that is, if it's, like, for example, I spent money on my bike for IRONMAN. I spent money on a bunch of this stuff. IRONMAN's it's an expensive sport to get into.
I can imagine,
but it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I had. So I felt comfortable spending that money.
Of course.
Whereas when it comes to, like, stupid stuff, I almost feel like I don't need to spend money on those sorts of things as much. Because... It's not as important, right? That's exactly.
Who are you trying to impress with that bag or those shoes or
so things that impact my health, things that impact my physical goals, my workplace goals, that stuff, I'm a little bit less attached to that money than I might have been before, and I'm a little bit more willing to take on risk to get the things out of life that I want while I'm still here.
Yeah.
But also there's all those like commodities that I don't really need that I'm less inclined and less to spend on and less interested in because I don't attach my self-worth to them anymore.
What kind of bike do you have?
I have a Cervelo.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a nice bike.
My dad loves bike. DeRosa?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's obsessed with biking, but he loves it too. So I'm always around nice bikes, but they're not cheap whatsoever.
and I got a deal too, and it was still not cheap.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you buy the bike built? You built it yourself?
I got it built. Yeah.
Okay, that's...
It's like a pretty. It's like a starter. It's like a race tri bike, I guess.
Okay. But does it have the fat tires on it?
The carbon plate tires.
That's pretty cool. That's really cool. And I'm kind of wondering. You have people, obviously, you mentioned you have some really close friends and some family. Have you switched the people you hang out with since?
Yes and no.
You know what I mean? Like
I think it's changed in a couple ways. So first, as silly as it sounds, me and my brother were in a bit of a fight before the shooting, and it was like a dumb fight. Like we're super close growing up,
Yeah.
and it was over. I think I was upset he was spending too much time with his girlfriend or something.
Okay.
Just something that's like a stupid thing to be in a fight about,
Yeah.
right? Because he cares about her, and they like to spend time together.
get it,
You know,
yeah.
whatever. And I remember after we got shot, like there was not even like a solution to the fight. You know, it was literally just an acknowledgement of like that was what were we doing?
Yeah.
Imagine if you lost. Like imagine if I died or he died and
You'd
we didn't
feel,
solve
yeah.
that fight. You
Yeah,
know, so things like that. You know, they don't impact my relationships as much. Like stupid things. I like to have them solved really quickly. Like with the people that I get, if I ever have a disagreement with, you know,
Yeah.
my girlfriend, my parents, my siblings, whatever it is, I really try to prioritize getting those fixed because it's never that deep.
You know,
right?
it's really funny. Like I'm kind of the same way because even my dad said this to me the other day. We were in kind of a dumb fight. I want to say over the dishes or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, anything could happen, like you just said. And imagine how you'd feel if God forbid, you know, you lost that person and you were in a fight over something that, you know, that dumb.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that people, you know, some people will cut people out of their life over something so petty because, you know, one was too stubborn to talk about it or this or that. So that's a good. I like that answer in terms of
you have to check your ego. I think is the hardest part, right? Is you have to be willing to realize that you might lose some fights. Like you might not be the one.
Listen, it's not always easy to apologize and say that, you know, maybe I was wrong, but I think it shows that you're.
And there's also, for what it's worth, like as a second answer to that question, there's definitely some friends that I maybe have had to cut out over the years that I might not have had the courage to cut out otherwise, right? There's some people in my life who were pretty negative, pretty full of, I think, like just like unnecessary anger, who at some point or another would be wonderful people, but then didn't always hold that to be true. And they were hard people to cut out, right? You know, it was easy to cut out people who I thought were wasting my time or, you know, just wanted to like drink and party, and that's when they were my friends. Like those people,
those are easy to get.
I've still got love for them and I hope they do well. Same with the people who, you know, maybe I had to cut out because they were negative and angry and whatever. They might talk shit about me sometimes. They might say mean things about me, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I've still got love for them. I still hope they do well. But at the end of the day, when you go through something like I went through, you start to realize that you need to have the right people around you, or else you're just going to go right back, you know, down into a negative place.
Yeah, I saw a thing. I was scrolling a little bit.
That's okay.
But it was Patrick Bet-David. I don't know if you know him. He was holding an elastic basically, and it was like, this is you trying to take off and keeping these people.
Yeah.
They're holding you back, and eventually you're gonna snap and come back. And it's
and I think it's somewhere in the middle of something like that. And the reason I say that is because for a long time I felt like I needed to be alone to accomplish the things that I wanted to. I felt like I had to cut out some of my OG friends, like the people who I really did care about, but they weren't, you know, as business inclined. They weren't as interested in the things that I was interested in, but they're still awesome people, right? And I think what I've realized is you can still find time for those people, right? I think that there's like the red pill or whatever it is, where like people just go like they go so far the other way. It's fine to have friends who don't have the same interests as you.
For sure. Yeah.
You just have to like cut out the people who are resentful and bitter and negative and always complaining about everything. Those are the people that I think you need to either if you really care about them, tell them they got to get it together, right? And if they're a person who is interested or aligned with you, usually they'll understand that. Or B, you know, make the hard decision. But you could totally have friends who don't necessarily line up with all of your interests.
I think if they don't bring you down, you're good.
Yeah.
Like I think it's because you could have a friend who has the same vision, but they're not disciplined and they're dragging you down versus the guy who doesn't have the vision, but
they're your biggest supporters, man.
Exactly.
They want to see you win, right?
Who cares if they're not into business, but they still, you know, helping you out and they're doing their own thing and they're not bringing you down.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, like even when you're working hard in business, you have all these ambitions, all these dreams, all these goals, and they're all you think about for a long time. Like sometimes you actually just need to be removed from that stress,
for sure,
and like hang out with your boys, right?
Yeah, it's the most important. My closest friend is, there's always so much going on, and you know, you're always filming and you're doing this and that, and it's kind of like, you know, it's nice to it's nice to have that break and just go again, chill with the boys. And
well, one of my best friends I talk to every day, he's a big finance bro, living the total opposite life, the life that I want to live right now. Right? He's on Bay Street. He's working
Toronto,
hard.
Right?
Toronto, yeah. He's like the Wall Street of Canada, or whatever. But very finance bro, very structured, very disciplined with his finances, as everything, right? It's just couldn't fathom the life and the risk that it takes to go the entrepreneurial route.
For sure,
And we sometimes poke fun at each other, but at the end of the day, that's a dude who will support me in whatever I'm doing, and I'll support him, and we have so many other common interests that it's okay that we have these different visions, because we still want to see each other win with them, right? And that's something that a lot of people, especially in the entrepreneurial world, kind of don't figure out until it's too late, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And this is going to be, I think this will be a hard one, maybe not, but if your Instagram gone, TikTok gone, all the videos, interviews erased, and I'm the entire world could hear you for 30 seconds, what are you saying?
That is a hard one.
I had to think about this when I was writing it. It was kind of difficult, because it's you have 8 billion people now who, for some reason, you're just here, and they're...
I can't plug my website where there's all the information.
just they can go read it themselves.
Yeah, they can go read everything.
Yeah. But if you just got that message, maybe 30 seconds or a minute, just something that you, or maybe just a sentence or a word, I don't know.
It's a tough... There's so many... So I want to get this one right, because I think this is a really cool question. I think one of the things that matters the most to me is, if I had, let's say I could send one message to the entire world, it would just be, you're going to have really bad days, you're going to have really good days, but at the end of the day, those are going to be the ones that you remember, right? I think in your lowest moments, they might suck. They might be really hard. They might be so overwhelming and so traumatizing and so tragic that they fundamentally change everything about your life. And your best moments might be so wonderful. They define who you are, and they give you courage. They give you ambition. They give you resilience. They give you, self-confidence, whatever it is. But 30 years from now, you're going to remember the worst days and the best days. You're going to forget almost every day in between, right? And I think not enough people think about that when they're going through the hard or the good, right? Some people don't celebrate their wins. I was one of those people. I always felt like I needed to be doing more. So even when I did something incredible, objectively incredible, I didn't really celebrate it, right?
You gotta celebrate, I think, those personal wins too. I think. I think even me, I kind of.
And even in the same way, when you have those really shitty days, take them for what they are, and soak them in, because soon enough you're going to be better. Soon enough it's going to be fixed, right? When I was in the hospital, those worst days, there's a lot of days where I wish I could go back and just feel what I felt in those moments, right? Because I was alive, whether I liked it or not.
You were still here either way,
Yeah, whether I liked the situation or not. The man I am today is fundamentally built on those moments, right? And I don't know, those are the moments I remember for the rest of my life. So I think that people need to really focus on that. They need to take the good and the bad and just enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think too, even bringing up your finance friend, one thing that always sticks with me, and more of emotions, for those more of those stretches, those really bad days, those really good days, is there was a story of it was a king, and he had asked one of his servants, he's like, I need a ring, and it needs to say something that's always going to remind me to never get caught, never be too happy or never be too sad. It was a difficult one, and I think the answer was this too shall pass. And it was one that I always think about, because it's even a day trader, for example, you could be up 100 grand and then down 2 million, whatever it might be. But I think if you just remember that, you have your good days, you have your bad days, and to think almost the bad days might be a good thing. I before, literally an hour before this, some dude rear-ended me, and you know what the first thought was? To me, it was you know what, maybe if I would have turned on this street, some kid would have jumped. Some kid would have jumped in front of the car. Maybe something would have fallen, killed me or something. And I'm I was kind of grateful in a sense. And I was on the phone with my friend, and I'm you know what? if I could go back, just like I had asked you, and
Yeah.
prevent that, I 100% wouldn't, because I kind of believe that, everything.
Everything
There's a
happens
reason.
for a
Yeah,
reason.
I really like that.
And I think, like, I don't know, not to get too deep here, but one of the questions a lot of people ask me is if I'm religious, and that's like kind of it's a strange question to ask in today's world, because I think that there's like stigma, there's this, there's that, but
Yeah.
one of the things that I really try to echo, and I'm not particularly religious, like I'm spiritual in the sense that I'd like to believe there's a greater power, there's some sort of method to all this madness, but one thing I always try to remember is that you're out of control of the plan that's happening, right? There, you have no ability to change anything. You can only respond to things that are happening, right? And
Really, you think? I kind of disagree with that.
I think that you can partly determine your own fate, but you can't determine what obstacles are going to be thrown at you, right?
Like, do you think that, like, are you thinking that, like, everyone's life in a way is already
No. What I'm saying is that you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond to it.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe I phrased that wrong, because
No,
obviously you can give yourself a better deck of cards. You can stack the cards in your favor. You can give yourself a better chance of success.
But those obstacles will still.
But those obstacles are still going to come.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. And that's that's one thing I always try to remember.
Yeah, it's more how it's always going to be how you react, right? You gotta, for sure. You're running the Ironman in, what is it, 3 weeks now?
Yeah, 2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks. What's the plan after the Ironman? We kind of talked off screen, but
Yeah, I'm excited. I think one of the things that's challenging when you take on, something like an Ironman is it takes up so much of your life for a relatively long period of time, right? It's been about 6 months of focused training. I'm able to do some work and some other stuff, of course, but when you have 20 hours a week blocked off to train, and then you get to spend time with your partner, and spend time doing other stuff, some projects get pushed aside.
Of course,
What I'm excited about for after the Ironman is I want to kind of go back to the original roots that I started, hit the ground running, the charity work, and even my social platforms on. I want to go back to doing more like individual style campaigns where I actually get to go out and, find a sick kid who just needs some sort of, financial support, whether that's financial, whether they just need like a trip to the amusement park or something, like whatever it is. Like, I want to go back to those sorts of campaigns. Those are the ones that I had fun doing, the ones that I felt really like I was making a meaningful difference in people's lives doing, and I felt authentic doing, if that makes sense. I think sometimes when you're scripting content, you're overcomplicating all the things that you're doing, you've got these big plans, like all this stuff, you kind of feel a little disconnected from the mission, and I felt like that over the last little bit. Like I said earlier, Ironman's been really cool and it's been really fulfilling for me personally, but when it comes to putting my stuff out there to the world, I kind of feel disingenuous just like talking about how awesome I am.
You like talking about others?
I like talking about other people, and I like, making a meaningful impact in their lives with the work that I'm doing. So that'll be important. One of the things I want to focus back on too is getting back on more stages and speaking. It's something I started to do at the end of 2024, and I was honestly like scared to death doing it for the first couple times. It was pretty intimidating for me, and I was a relatively good speaker growing up and stuff. But it's so different, right? When you're getting paid, you're in front of these big crowds. It's intimidating, but I also I like doing it. I found I connected with a lot of people doing that sort of stuff. You can make relatively good money doing that stuff, and if I'm able to monetize those sorts of things, it opens up a lot of my time to do the content that I really like to do and make that impact. So
maybe like a speaking tour type thing.
It's hard to find those leads, but but I think that's partly where my energy would go, and then I want to get back to supporting not-for-profits as well and doing some consulting in that space, helping them kind of grow their missions a little bit. That's I think where my head's at after the Ironman is really just focused on some of the more like work and business specific tasks that I've kind of been putting off a little bit, honestly, through this training journey.
And I'm curious, it's kind of a basic question, but I've asked every person I've pretty much met the same. What's the worst piece of advice you ever got? And I'm going to follow that up with what's the best.
The worst piece of advice, and I'll preface this by saying my dad has given me so many wonderful, good pieces of advice. I think the worst piece of advice that I ever got was that you want to be.
Him?
It's from him.
Okay.
My dad was a big believer that you need to be a little bit good at everything.
I struggle with this.
I think that that's something that I thought was good advice for a long time, and now I'm realizing it's really good to get exceptionally talented at a few things, and there's value in knowing a little bit about everything, right? But in the information age that we live in now, knowledge is so abundant, access to information is so abundant.
Yeah.
You can have whatever fact that you want in the snap of your fingers, right?
Better to be an expert than a generalist.
Exactly. It's better to be an expert than a generalist. And that's something, like I said, he's done a lot of good for me.
Yeah.
And made me like a really stronger person than I probably otherwise would have been without his influence.
Yeah.
But that's one piece of advice that I look back on, and I think when you try to do everything, you're going to do a lot of you're not going to succeed. I think you have to really just focus in on things that you're good at and get good at, and invest your energy into those areas.
Yeah, like I was sitting down the other day, and it's kind of like I had so much on my mind. I'm like, let me just write down everything I'm thinking of, and there was like 12 big projects, and I'm like, this isn't going to work, right? I don't have unlimited time, so I did the same thing. I'm like, I narrowed it down to like the 5 most important things, but it's always a struggle, because even in business there's like a million opportunities.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how do I pick one, go at it, and then you find a challenge and you're like, this one's better, and then it's back and forth as opposed to just...
Well, it's a combination. I think like you have to be willing to pivot when pivots are necessary, but you also need to know when it makes sense to pivot and when not, right?
Yeah.
I think if you know Alex Hormozi and you've seen him, he talks about anxiety and how anxiety, like depression, comes from hopelessness.
Yeah.
Anxiety comes from too much hope.
Exactly.
Right? And when you're driven, when you truly believe in yourself, you genuinely think that there's a million ways that you can succeed.
Yeah.
Right? And that leads to this just like crazy anxiety and stress because you don't know what to do, right? You think that you can just
you see this light,
areas.
but you have no idea. It's for sure.
Yeah. So zoning in on that one thing and at least giving it a real fighting chance, I think is advice that I would give myself, because I don't always follow that advice.
Yeah.
But it's what I'm starting to learn for sure.
So obviously now, what's the best piece of advice you've ever got?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways I think I could go with that, but the thing that matters to me the most is just having fun with whatever you're doing, right? I think that one of the things that people don't think about enough in the world that we've built out today is they don't think that they should be enjoying everything, right? I follow a lot of like Stoic philosophy, and there's this idea that you need to be struggling all the time, and that's how you get to the promised land, whatever it is. But you can be struggling and still have fun with it, right? When I'm out training for IRONMAN and I'm fearful that I'm going to drown because I'm scared of swimming because I'm just learning how to swim, when I'm gassed on the bike, when I'm gassed on the run, you're still trying to have fun with it, right? Like you wouldn't just take on this voluntary suffering for nothing, right? Like you may as well kind of enjoy it. And when you look at people, they go to a job that they hate every day and they complain about it. They stay with their spouse, their significant other who they hate and they complain about all the time. They have the same friends that they bitch about and talk shit about each other behind the scenes with. People just love to be in this like negative place and kind of like
they think it's normal.
They think it's normal, and it's not. Like you literally should be having fun with what you're doing.
Listen,
even if your job sucks, even if it's a hard job, think about the positives that come with it, right? Like, and sometimes like I look at my dad as another example. He's been a truck driver for 35 years, whatever it was. And I remember so often he'd come home and complain about how tired he was. He'd complain about how long his day was. And he was working long-ass days, man. He'd leave at 7 a.m., get home at 9 p.m., right? He was working long days. My brother worked with him one winter and said all day at work he was having fun. He was throwing snowballs at people. Like, he was this totally different person. And part of me kind of wishes he brought that in to the home, right? He didn't complain about his work ever. He just kind of like had fun with it because it gave his kids the opportunity to play hockey. It gave our family the chance to, own a house, do all these things, right? And I think when you have fun with whatever you're doing, it translates really positively into the people that you have around you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But
you
also
sense that energy in a way.
Yeah. And I mean, like, what's the point of being miserable over something that you, especially something that you can control?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Even with you, like, before we ever talked, I could instantly tell from those messages, like, this is you can tell, there's just something about it. You can tell when somebody's happy when they have that energy in a way. But I think everybody is so, like, they go, yeah, you're, like you said, they go to a job they hate, they're with somebody they don't like, and it's, even in the new age of, you could say, young, entrepreneurs or whatever, they're kind of told that it has to be the 4 a.m. wake up, do this, and I was that for, man, there was a time where I was like, I remember I live in an apartment, and I was like, I'd be up at like 6, and I was just like exercising in the morning, so I'd go to the stairs, literally in the building, I'd run up the stairs, down the stairs, I'd crack my egg, I'd go in the shower. It was like very...
Your raw eggs?
No, not raw eggs, definitely not.
I went through a raw eggs phase.
Okay, really? Yeah. No, me it was cooked eggs, but it was like, everything was like...
So you almost got red pill maxed, but you didn't quit.
Literally, it was regimented to the, like, it would be the read 10 pages, then I'd get up, I'd shower, there'd be a 20 minutes on, looking at, the markets and seeing what's going on. But it was kind of like, if you're just struggling and you're doing this, you're not doing anything. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, people just think that because they're struggling, something good is going to come out of it. In reality, you can have the best friggin' time in the world and create the most successful business ever. And people just think that if I'm enjoying it, then I can't be being productive. And it's completely,
it's
wrong.
like a self-fulfilling prophecy too, right? Because when you're miserable, you get to tell yourself that, well, like, at least I'm doing something, and then it's not my fault that I'm miserable because I'm doing something, and then it's just this constant spiral, right? Whereas if you just decide to do the things that make you happy and prioritize those things, even if they're hard, even if they're a challenge to figure out, you might still deal with overwhelm, with anxiety. You might still deal with all of these things, but there's a method to the madness, if that makes 100%. Sense. Instead of just, like, bitching about something that is in your control and not fixing it. I've never understood
I don't get
how
that
people
either.
do that.
And listen, I have one last question for you. How do you want Brendan Peacock to be remembered, in a sense? I don't know if you think about that. The last man I had on the interview basically said he didn't really think about that much, but I want to know how
I used to think about it a lot. Like, after I got shot, when I was literally laying on the ground bleeding out, like I told you, all I could think about was my legacy. It's literally the only thing that I cared about in my last moments. And for a long period of time, I spent a lot of time thinking about the legacy that I was building. I wanted to build the charity so that way people talked positively, about me if I was to die, right? It was a huge focus of mine. But I think as I've gone a little bit further into my rehab journey, into building the things that I've built, into doing life, I guess, after being shot, I realized that I don't care how I'm remembered. I care how I influence the people who matter to me, right? Okay. So the greatest legacy that I could ever leave, is giving the people that matter to me the skills necessary to thrive without me, right?
Like the leadership we talked about,
like Gavin, I guess that's what you want to call it, but like Gavin, Isaiah, my girlfriend, my friends, the people I'm able to mentor and influence. I don't care how they remember me. I just want to be able to give them the tools necessary to thrive with or without me in their life, right? So if I'm able to do that, that's the greatest legacy that I could ever leave behind, because eventually everybody's going to forget about me, right? And that's okay. I wouldn't be upset if that happens. I don't need to be in the history books. I don't need to be, whoever you want to name. I don't need to be some big figure like that. But if I could leave a positive mark on the people that matter to me so much that because of my influence in their life, they're able to thrive even without me being there independently, that's the greatest legacy that I could ever leave behind. And it's something that changed with age for me, because I didn't... Before, it was all about, like, Brandon. It was like, how will I be remembered? What are they going to say about me at the funeral? All this stuff. And now, the more that I think about it, the more it's like, it's just words. It's just words that are going to be said once and probably not remembered, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, thank you so much. I learned a lot. And I'm excited. I'm gonna come up to the Ironman. I wanna watch you
Hell yeah.
finish it, and I want to see you cry for the fourth. I want to see how that goes. But no, thank you very much.